Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot and very happy to be here tonight. So, I have a special guest, Paladin, and I've been begging him to come on the show for a while now, and he finally agreed. Some reason he's a bit shy, and we can talk about that. And he'll probably get mad at me because I said that, but at any rate. Uh, so hold on one second. Actually, we don't have we he doesn't use video because, well, he can explain that. He's a forensic financial accountant, and he's supposed to be, I guess, a private investigator as well. And so he doesn't want people to recognize him. Is the reason, supposedly. Okay, so Paladin, are you there?
I guess.
Okay.
quite quite an introduction there. Thank you.
Well, I mean, just to clarify for people, and some people, of course, know who you are, and you've been on my show before several times, and you even interviewed me. So, but that's the history. And for people that don't know, can you give yourself a little background? Explain about the White Hats and the Hats reports while you're at it. So, do that whole overview.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Okay, wait. Some reason they're not hearing you. Oh, God. I'm very sorry. Not sure why. So let's try this again. Yeah, that's just fucking weird. Hold on one second here. It's because you don't have video that there could be an issue, but I'm not sure what the issue is. Uh, that's Well, I can always call. I can call you on the phone as well. So don't worry. We're going to get this together. But um, okay, start again. Okay, and we'll see if people can hear you now.
Okay. Sound check, everybody.
Okay, yes, people say they can hear you now. So I'm not sure because he doesn't have video. We don't know what the issue is. But go ahead.
Okay. Um,
Start. Okay, start. I introduced you. I think they heard that part. But talk about the White House reports and who you are and your background just a little bit, and then we'll launch into this whole thing.
okay. White Hats reports. We started that in 2010 because we felt that we needed to get information out in the public, and we also wanted to let the bad guys, the cabal, know that we knew what was going on. And in the doing of all of that we were able to inform. At the time, we didn't know it when we started, but we informed a lot of people, both in the United States and outside the United States, about issues that they were not aware of, that concerned them, that had them. Somebody, you have a problem with somebody, and there's a lot of missing pieces. There's a lot of dots, but you can't connect them. And inadvertently, we supplied a lot of dots to a lot of people so that they could connect them and basically understand a few things. So anyway, we started doing our reports in November of 2010. So we're coming up on 10 years. I think we've released 68 reports at this point. Around report 36 or 37 is when Lord James did his infamous speech in the House of Lords, talking about the $15 trillion. I think it was White Hat's report 60, and we released some documents, I think, in White Hat report 41 and 42 and 43, maybe somewhere along in there. And then in White Hat's report 63 is when we released for the first time, as far as I'm aware, in the world, a copy of a trading program contract. So
Okay, well, tell them about the missing, the Lord Blackheath, because you guys were responsible for him going into the House of Lords. So can you talk about that really briefly?
well, yeah, that was three $5 trillion SWIFTs that were sent from the Federal Reserve to Pure Heart in Europe, and all the information was provided to Lord James of Blackheath, and he went before the House of Lords on February 16th, 2012, and basically in a 10-minute speech laid it all out, asked for them to do an investigation. 15 trillion, mind you. I think the U.S. debt at that point was around 11 or 12, but Obama had just taken office. This occurred. There were three $5 trillion transfers. This occurred in April and May of 2009. So Obama had only been in office for 3 or 4 months. So this money went to Europe. Interestingly enough, nobody knows. Well, I'm sure somebody knows, but nobody's talking about where this money ended up. Nobody's for sure where it actually went because some of the bankers stole it. So anyway, that's another story. We do play in our episode 148 on White Hat's Media Group YouTube page. We do play in the middle of that first video of episode 1. We do play his 10-minute speech in its entirety. So if you haven't heard it, you can go there and listen to it. And so that started us down the road to try to figure out who Pure Heart was, and specifically Rossier, who turns out to be Ferrara, who turns out to be one of the group of 5 of the 5-Star Trust. And that started us down that road as far as what 48 was all about, and documenting the creation and the origination of the shadow government, also known as the Deep State.
Okay. And so can you talk now about how you guys, in other words, what you're comprised of, the fact that you have intelligence from around the world, that you've got members from around the world, and the idea that you're also in support of Trump and QAnon.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I say, and the About Us section talks about that meeting that was convened in the London Safe House. It talks about, what we discussed. It talked about what was decided. And then we all went back to our respective countries and tried to implement that. And, one of the things that we exposed the $700 billion theft of Tropos money. We exposed Falcone, of course. Falcone, we really went into that in great detail. And so the $700 billion that was transferred to, well, they attempted to transfer it to the U.S. from the Bank of China in Taiwan, got intercepted. It got stolen out of the system, and that was humanitarian funds. Falcone's funds were going to be put into a program so he could rebuild Katrina after the hurricane, or rebuild New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and also rebuild the inner parts of Miami, who had been hit with a hurricane. So we have been working on humanitarian projects for a long, long time. And of course, when you're dealing with a system that is as corrupt as the financial system is, anything that is going to be used for benevolent purposes of any significance that would have an impact, well, they steal it. And we've documented that. So at this point in time, we are now, we're like a bunch of idling Porsches where we are sitting here ready for the new system to come into place so that we can implement a lot of these humanitarian projects and these projects that we have had on the drawing board for a long time were ready to go. I don't know. I don't know what you want to talk
Okay.
about
Well, what I want to do
with
now.
Q.
Yes. I mean, it's important that people understand that you're patriots and that you have been, some of your members may even be part of, I don't know what you want to call it, the Trump task force or things like that. In other words, you have members that could be involved with actual arrests, for example, and your financial documents. Have you given them to the Trump task, team, etc.?
Yeah, Trump has got a lot of our information. Barr has got a lot of our information. As a matter of fact, as I understand it, Barr has got the information on the Tropos theft. Trump knows about Falcone because Falcone and Trump were in the same business, real estate. And Falcone had given Trump the information on his theft back in, I think it was around 2011 or 2012. And it was right around the same time that Trump, if you recall, had come out and was questioning Obama's birth certificate. It was around that same time. So we have people that are close to Trump. Trump knows all about Romney. I think in episode 1, we showed you a copy of an email that was sent to Romney's fundraiser about some of the money he was collecting and the situation with Bush and Herzog and stealing Falcone's money. Trump's aware of that. Trump is also aware of the trading program contract with Riyadh, and he's also aware of the $25,000 trillion, which is 25 quadrillion settlement agreement that Obama signed with Riyadh. So Trump is aware of all this stuff.
Okay, now recently, my understanding was that Obama was supposed to be arrested, and that didn't happen, although a couple of his lawyers from a ways back, it seemed, were a husband-wife team were killed. That was last week. So what is your understanding on the status on that?
Well, as far as certain things that aren't related to the financial system, we just get bits and pieces because that's kind of really not our forte, and we're not as well entrenched in that group as we are in the financial area. But the arrests were supposed to begin, originally the arrest began in Europe. When all this coronavirus came down, the arrest began in Europe, and that was to take out what is referred to, for us anyway, as infrastructure. Then the arrests then moved to the United States. And none of the things that now have started, which is the public disclosure, none of those things were going to happen, the public disclosure part, until the infrastructure was taken out, because there was concern about false flags, there was concern about violence, there was concern about certain things happening that would get the public caught up in it, riots and those kinds of things. And so before they start doing the public disclosure of what's been going on, which started yesterday, by the way, with Flynn, we had more dumps today. We're going to get more dumps every day, probably for a long time. They had to get the infrastructure taken out of the way. And these are the mercenaries, the private armies that these people have put together with their off-balance sheet money that they have. Based on, their drug profits and trading program profits, same money, same funds that they use for the black projects and the secret space program. So that infrastructure had to be taken out first. And of course, there was a time frame, there was a timeline that had been laid out for that to happen. And of course, whenever you're into that kind of a situation, which is basically a full-on military operation, sometimes, things can go wrong, or things can take longer than you think they're going to take. But today, I think, if you saw Trump's presser, we had 7 flags up behind him, and none of the flags had fringe on them.
Okay, and so to speak the obvious, that means what? That they've taken down, The Illuminati, their
Well,
form
I
of
think,
government. I mean, what?
yeah, I think that's a signal because the seven flags is interesting because that relates to the seven trumpets. That also relates to seven broadcasts that are supposed to be upcoming that are going to be given by Trump to basically lay out all of the information. Now, I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but that's been talked about. So I don't think it was a coincidence that we had seven flags up today behind him because we've kind of paid attention to the pressers. We check the flags, how many flags, what flags, do the flags have fringe? What about the presidential seal? Is it the presidential seal? Is it not the seal? Does that mean, unsealed means the indictments are being unsealed, or are they still sealed if the seal's there? And so anyway, today, and I can't remember a time in my lifetime where there has been an official American flag in that circumstance, without the fringes. Now, it could have happened and I missed it because I don't watch every single, press conference or, whatever. I mean, I don't watch everything for, the last 50 years, but I don't remember ever that there wasn't fringe on the flag, and the fringe on the flag denotes admiralty law, maritime law,
Right.
law of the seas.
So,
And so if that is not on the flag, that's very significant. That's
I
very
agree.
significant.
That's a big sign. Now, I don't know if you saw, there's, I think he's called Praying Medic. He does sort of a rendition of the QAnon releases. And he said there's some significant about these, there's a silent war, and that there were dots at the end of it. And now we're down to one dot. Did you happen to hear that?
Yeah, there's kind of been a countdown of sorts that has been going on, and I think that's basically from Q. And everybody, there's a lot of what I call eggheads or autists out there that are following Q, and they're able to a certain degree, decipher or decode it. And I understand the Q effort because it's a lot. It's some of it is very similar to the way what we were doing in concept, and that was a lot of times we were giving messages to the deep state that maybe everybody else didn't understand, but we were giving them messages. So I think a lot of people. I mean, Q is just I mean, you got it's like Trump. You've got people on each side of the fence, and to the far right, and then to the far left, and they are entrenched in their belief system about it. And the problem with that is you just need to look at what they're saying. Who cares who they are? Why does it matter who they are? It doesn't matter who they are. The reason you don't know who they are is because they want to stay anonymous so they can live and they can continue this fight. Because, people, I mean, I talk about certain things happening behind the scenes, and some of my friends who I, sometimes think they should be awake, they should understand what's going on, and they do, but they forget, they fall into that trap where they think that CNN has to report it for it to be true. And I say, how do you think that if you have information, because I can speak from experience, this is the way we had to do it. There was nobody that was going to pick us up and run our articles in any kind of mainstream format in magazines, in anybody with. I mean, we sent our reports every time we did a report. We sent them to everybody. Okay, we sent them to the mainstream media. We sent them to the online personalities that we're all familiar with and know. And they never picked it up. I mean, people did not pick up what we were doing. Okay, so if you expect to hear about arrests, if you expect to hear about child rescue from CNN or MSNBC or CBS, you might as well forget it because it's not going to happen. So Trump is the example of going directly to the people through Twitter. We went directly to the people through the internet. Q is going directly to the people from the internet. There's no other way you can get the information out there. It's just like you, Carrie. You go through the internet to get your information out. There's no other way to do it. there isn't a mainstream media outlet of any size, shape, or color that's going to even look at what you're doing and put it out there.
Sure.
So that's what everybody has to understand, that if you think you're going to see this stuff reported in the mainstream media, then you don't understand at all what the heck is going on here.
Okay, well, I
Ugh.
mean, but there is a bit of a leak going on, at least with regard to Fox News right now, and Tucker Carlson, and also Laura Ingraham. I think to some degree, I've heard her make some astonishing statements about our rights being taken away and such. Now, there's a big story here, and you and I talked offline, and I said to you that I want people to understand, like, this idea, and I don't even know how to phrase it, but of the takedown of the financial system, the takedown of what is in essence the states, governments, and how the state governors are now being shown to be, well, in my view, at least with respect to California, the despots that they always were, but that no one could see until they got their hands on a little bit of power, and now suddenly they're going, hog wild. So there's some kind of thing there where Trump is actually working to expose them by allowing them to supposedly orchestrate the go back to work scenario. Can you talk a little bit about that? In other words, what this, and also wrap in your understanding of the financial system and digital currency and the rollout and the whole thing in that regard.
Wow, that's
Well,
as they
you know,
say,
you don't
a lot to
broad
unpack.
brush,
So, all
broad
right, well,
brushes.
okay, it's going to be difficult to do without getting into some details, and I'm sure you'll guide me in that direction at some point. So, I think where this started was, you and I have been talking well, we've been talking forever, but I mean, ever since we met, but we talk all the time about current events and certain things, and discuss all kinds of things. And so this has been something that you and I've been talking about ever since it started, of course. And I think there's a lot of things that are happening at one time. And if you're not awake, you're not going to understand why certain things are being done the way they're being done. For example, if you have been paying attention, Trump has put Fauci and Birx up there to expose them. They're being exposed. Okay, every day that they get up and talk, they're being exposed. People are looking up their background, their experience, and they're finding the negative information on Fauci. They're finding the connections to the virus or the vaccination community, to Gates, and everybody at this point should know about Gates. The information is out there. So Trump is allowing this to proceed in the way that they had planned it. And this has been planned for a long, long, long time. And this dovetails with the Obamacare law, okay? And I know that's probably 994 pages of legalese that nobody read except Paladin. And so, they're talking. So now what we have is we have a quote unquote pandemic, which that is, that could be argued, but let's just assume that there is one, like they say. Although, the information is starting to come out now where, they're overinflating the numbers because Medicare pays them more for, they get 39,000 if it's COVID related. If it's not, it's only 13,000, and yada, 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 yada. And you got the California doctors who are basically coming out and saying, okay, based on the numbers, it's 0.0043 or whatever percent of the population. It doesn't, the response that is being, given is not relative to really what is going on. We should be getting back to work. Everybody should be getting back out there. And so this whole thing, Trump is just letting this play out because everybody is exposing themselves. If you look at, let's just say, for example, do you know how many states there are that require vaccines for children in school? Any idea?
No.
5. Do you know which five? I bet you could name two right off the top of your head. New York and California. Okay. So then,
Okay, I didn't know that California actually went through with that because I thought there were people that don't abide by that.
well, you're out there. I'm not. I don't know, but I know that the state laws. It's Maine, it's West Virginia, it's Mississippi, California, and New York. Okay. So they don't allow any exemptions except a medical exemption. And of course, if you read what the medical exemption, you might as well throw it out because it's not going to apply to hardly anybody. You have to be sick at the time you're supposed to get the shot to not get the shot, or you have to be allergic to some of the stuff that's in the shot. And, who knows what's in it? The stuff that they give us is bad enough. But if you have an issue with mercury, they've got a waiver for you to sign. They've got waivers to sign. And anyway, the third one is, underlying medical conditions that would prevent you from doing that, which all of those would probably require a doctor's certificate. So what I'm saying is that the religious exemption or the philosophical exemption that every other state has, except California, New York, Maine, West Virginia, and Mississippi. Okay. So overlay that with the coronavirus map, and you got California and New York that's problematic. Overlay that with the 2016 election map. Same situation, okay? Now, look at the financial statements of those two states, New York, California. You guys are upside down. I just looked at your most recent comprehensive annual financial statement report, and you guys are upside down. That means you've got a car that's worth $5,000, but you owe $10,000 on it. Okay, you got more liabilities than you have assets.
Okay,
So,
but I just have to say because the aerospace industry is really centered here in underground, of course, in California. Either the books aren't reflecting that, which of course they wouldn't, right? They don't reflect the secret space
no,
program
no,
stuff.
I mean
So
that's
we may be upside down, but in reality, we're way and we're still the biggest earner in all of the United States, and we're like basically a country.
okay, but you're still a problem, and you said you bet you. I mean, you mentioned it. You said it. I mean, now I see where you guys aren't they going to close the beaches for another 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, because we've got this complete psycho as a governor. I mean, and there's no understanding as to what the hell's going on. I mean, he doesn't seem to get it. Duh. But there's,
Well,
and this also it also when I wrote this actually last night on a Twitter, I said, look, that guy is reporting to the WHO, WHO. He's not reporting to Trump. Okay. And there must be these other states as well, these other state governors. I think it was Michigan where they had the big demonstrations going on. In other words, those governors, their higher power, if you will, is the WHO, which is in essence the
well,
UN New World Order.
it's the it's the deep state. Yeah,
Yeah.
their bosses are the deep state, and so they're
They're
pushing back.
obeying those guidelines, so to speak. Now,
Right.
but and we talked about. I said, why doesn't Trump step in? Because I don't want to be under this nonsense, and just because I live in the state of California, and somebody's got to stop these tyrants, right? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we've got a situation where, as you're saying, Trump is trying to expose them by allowing them to be shown to be the despots they are. And as you're saying, it unfortunately goes along those red-blue lines, which seems kind of absurd in a certain way, and all that. So, okay, but how long does that go on? Because, this is not
Well,
a good thing.
it's up to the people, and that's what Trump's trying to show everybody. It's very simple. He's trying to make it up to the people. It's up to the people in California, because who put Newsom in office? I didn't. People that didn't live in California didn't put him in office. You guys did, right?
Well,
So
I didn't, but
it's your.
yeah,
No, I know, but I understand that. But it's like
right.
you guys have got to do something. It's the same
Well,
thing in New
okay.
York.
All right. Yeah, and that's, that's an interesting dilemma because he's also passed, draconian law that you can't demonstrate, so you get automatically arrested. And there's reason to believe that the reason they opened the beaches last weekend here was because people were at a boiling point with regard to this whole lockdown, and he would have
Right.
had, you know, demonstrations all over the state, up and down the beaches. Let's put it that way. Now, what's going to happen this weekend, I don't know, but my thought is they're not, the people are not going to stand for it. They're just going to go out there anyway. But you don't know because I see a lot of people that are, I don't know what you want to call it, goose stepping along with their silly masks and all this nonsense. I mean, they don't research, they don't understand what's going on. They're not listening to all the doctors out there. They only listen to, I don't know, the canned version. Now, let's move on for a minute. I mean, we can come back to that, okay? So,
I think we should, but yeah, go
all
ahead.
right. Well, I just wanted to go back to Fauci. I never can say his name right. And Burks, they're on stage, and you said there were basically they're under pressure, they're under arrest to turn like state's evidence. Is that what you would say? And this is secret, so you see them on stage, but they're not really free. They're actually being taken down as we speak, but we don't see any indication of that, right? Other than someone told me recently, oh, well, he's not Fauci. I don't know if he's back on stage now, but he was off stage for a while.
Yeah, well, I think what you got to understand is that when Trump said that we're going to we're going to stop funding the WHO and we're going to do an investigation, that was the signal that they're going to look at Fauci, they're going to look at Birx, and they're going to look at
I
eventually
know,
they're
but
going to look
do
at
they have to
Gates.
look at these people? I mean, come on, they know these players
I
are
know, but
notorious.
how well they are to you and me. They are to the woke people, but the
Well,
people are out
the
there
Trump,
goose
no,
stepping
Trump,
as you.
QAnon, they know the players, they know the indictments. That these people have been named by now. Back
Right,
channel.
but here's the problem, Carrie. You know, Trump can Trump can do all these things in the military with all the backing and all the good guys, and we can defeat the bad guys in the deep state, and we can put in a new system. But if we still have these people who don't get it, how are we going to keep our system after we get a new one in? If these people don't understand what's going on, and I want to go back to the state of California, and I asked you this question the other day. What are you guys going to do if Newsom comes out and says, okay, I'm going to open the state back up, but you guys are going to have to wear masks. You're going to have to do this, and eventually when the vaccine comes out, you're going to have to get the vaccine, or you're not going to be able to go to the grocery, the bank, the theater, the nightclubs, the movie theater, the restaurants. You're not going to be able to go anywhere.
I don't think that
Okay, and
the states can have that kind of power. I don't.
well, they already
those are our
do.
but the Constitution guarantees us freedoms over that.
Carrie, they have not been observing the Constitution up to this point anyway.
Well, maybe
Okay,
not,
so
but that's what has to be,
well, I know,
reinstated.
but who's going to enforce it? Who's going to enforce it if you don't? If you guys don't
the
in the
federal
state?
government, that's their job.
No, and maybe no, it's not their job.
Why
See,
it
this
is?
is the no, it's not, because it's in the Constitution that the states have the power, not the federal government. The federal government is limited in its powers, and it's in the Constitution. That is why when Trump gets those questions, he says it's going to be up to the governors. Okay,
Yeah, but
now
he didn't say that at the beginning.
no, he was talking about certain powers that he has, and he can exercise them if he wants to. A lot of that has to do with that Defense Act, okay, where he can order
That's
the
the
meat
martial law
packers.
thing, right?
Well, no, that's the defense. That's the author. That's the
Defense Authorization Act.
no. I don't know. Somebody in the
Oh,
chat on it's a special act that he can invoke in an emergency to keep certain businesses open, to make sure supply chains keep going and all this kind of stuff. And he just used it to basically keep the meatpacking plants open because they were going to close. So he can do certain things with that. But, the thing of it is what he's doing when he says he's going to leave it up to the governors, if the governors don't do the right thing, then they're exposing themselves, right? And if he comes out and requires that, because they're going door to door now as we speak, collecting blood from people in Georgia.
For what purpose?
Testing.
Oh, no. You're kidding.
Yes, they're knocking on doors. Okay, so now what are the people in Georgia going to do about it? Okay, if you consent, then they win. It's just like if they tell you that you got to go into this because this tracking stuff is coming. This stuff is right around the corner for certain places. And when the vaccinations get in, then they're gonna try to push the vaccinations,
right.
And they're gonna make it mandatory. Okay, this was in Obamacare. See, this was all in Obamacare, where if that would have stayed in effect, that would have been law. That would have been law. Right now, it's not law. Okay, so when the governors try to do this stuff, everybody in the states got to push back. You don't consent. So are the people that are goose stepping, as you say, and wearing the masks? Those are the people who are going to get in line to get the vaccinations.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So then what happens? See what happens to the rest of you, because they are willing to give up their rights. They give your rights up too. And this is why we have to fight back. And this is why, people want to sit here and watch the show and cheer on Trump or whatever. And they don't think that they're going to have to go through some pain too. They don't understand that they're going to have to change too. Because if we win and we're successful, we come out the other side, we're going to see a whole different world, and people are going to have to get caught up in a big hurry, or we're not going to be able to keep it. And that's what we all have to understand. This is not dependent on Trump and the military guys and all that. It's dependent on us. We have to take part.
Well,
so you have to
sure.
do that.
I think a terrific. That in my world, of course, which is quite a different sort of slice, right? People are doing a great job. Doctors are coming forward, et cetera, et cetera. This is, there is a huge sort of revolution happening, and it is not just the United States; it's worldwide. So, people are giving pushback, at least in terms of the alternative media. And if we reflect, our audiences, then, then it goes beyond us. So I think that's happening. But on the other hand, how many people are going to have to get arrested for this thing to, go? And let's talk about the martial law, because you and I were talking about that briefly the other day, and I said, look, they're all in place. We know they're in place. They got in place right at the beginning of this thing, and to say nothing of all the exercises that put them in place. So what's going to go on with that? Because who's in control of those militaries, to turn against
Trump
the people? Well, they wouldn't be rolling out and arresting, et cetera.
They're rolling. No, it's not the military that's doing that. It's the local people.
Yeah, the military doesn't report to the governors.
Right. The military is there to keep the peace. That's what the military is there for.
Yeah, but that's all fine and good. That's like semantics. But the bottom line is, who's going to tell that military, to mow down a bunch of demonstrators?
Nobody. Well, I hope nobody is going to tell them. But that's not going to be, the military is not going to be responsible for that.
Well, somebody's got to tell them, to stand
down. That's the governors.
Or not.
That's the governors.
No, because, this actually gets into some things that are, and I want to talk also about this whole latest Pentagon rolling out these UFOs again. And, these are already, super sanitized versions of the visitation, et cetera. But, that I was told by a whistleblower behind the scenes the first time that stuff came out, that at least, I think it's the Tic Tacs, whether it's hundreds or whatever they are, that he said, that's ours. and that we were doing it to demonstrate to China what we have. It's kind of like a subtle threat. Okay. So some people are worried about the whole false flag, and I talk about that a lot, et cetera. I don't want to go down that road necessarily right here because I want to stay with this nuts and bolts. But what it gets down to in the end is this is a reality, and this happened also with, I don't know if you remember the missile that was shot off the coast of California, and one side of the military had no idea what the other side was doing, right? So
Yeah.
there is a split, and there is a split in California. In other words, that the military, the law enforcement, who they report to, who they think they report to, who's in charge, that sort of old joke. I mean, who's in charge? Really, it comes down to that. And I think we're fast approaching those days. And I think, Trump he cannot just stand by idly while, again, states are being draconian, and their militaries. And look, I'm sure that there's part of the military that reports to Trump and part does not. Okay, and you must know that as well, right?
Well, I don't know that. There probably are people in the military who maybe don't go along with Trump or don't believe the same thing as Trump. But when you get down to it, when the orders are given, they're either going to follow them or they're not, and they're going to get taken out if they're not. I don't think Trump would have instituted this plan had he not been confident enough in the military command structure that they would be able to do this.
Okay, but this gets into, I mean, look, this gets into underground bases, who has the power there, the battles that are probably going on down there, battles that may be going to go on down there, as well as, I mean, that's the real deep state. I mean, these surface, arrests and so on, these are the surface players. This is not the real, sort of the real McCoy, if you will. So, I mean,
that comes later, as I understand.
Okay, maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't. I mean, in other words, what I'm trying, and I wrote a whole article about this weeks ago saying, look, those individuals that are gray human hybrids that are being motivated by the artificial intelligence linked up with the gray hive mind that were actually headed for the border like zombies, in essence, to take down Trump. And this was even early in his camp, in 2016, I think it was. There is a precedent here where the deep state has control of and works with the gray aliens and the gray AI. And I just did this show with Cyrus Parson. I suppose you probably didn't see those. I did 2 interviews. The second one, he basically wouldn't answer my questions, and it became a very frustrating scenario. But he means well. I think he's afraid. He's, maybe he's being tracked down by the Chinese communists. Who knows? He wants to work with Trump, but to our knowledge, he's not being, recruited, so to speak. At any rate, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to give you the package because there's a lot of reasons to believe that Trump he's on stage, you're saying exposing, and that's a great storyline, okay? Exposing Fauci, exposing Birx and making, but they're shown to be fools already. They've been exposed. It's done. How long is he going to stand by while people are, where our government and our economy, because the economy of the United States is not going to be able to survive without New York and California, for example. This is the money-making fucking capital. So, I mean, seriously. So, and what are we talking about? Because you also told me that there's this hidden agenda that involves allowing the states to go bankrupt. And once they go bankrupt, talk to me about that scenario, because I don't think people get that one.
Okay, all of our government, from the federal level all the way down to the local level, the governments, okay, and I put that in quotes, the governments, they're actually all corporations. All right, They're all corporations. They are corporations that contract with the people to provide government services. So if you want to restore the republic, because that does have meaning, restore the republic, because right now it's a corporation. It's not a republic. It's not a government. It's a corporation. So you have to take down those corporations. That's what's going to happen to get to a republic. So that means the federal corporation in Washington, D.C., and that means every state corporation. So now that will hasten itself if these states file bankruptcy, because there's only 2 or 3 ways you can go if you file bankruptcy: complete liquidation, reorganization, or you can continue on based on some strict criteria. All right. But if they go into bankruptcy, that's a perfect opportunity to just take them out and reconstitute a republic right there on the spot. And Trump he's the president of the corporation. He's the CEO of the corporation. This is how Obama was able to take office, because the corporation does not have any restrictions on who can be president like the Constitution. And if you remember, Orly Tates filed several lawsuits on this, okay? And what did the court say? The court say, well, you don't have any standing. Yeah, you don't have any standing. The voters don't have any standing because we're chattel. We're collateral for the loan, for the corporation. We don't have any standing. So that's why the courts ruled that way, because we don't. We don't have any standing in the corporation.
Okay, but
so
how is
so
this
you
going to
got to take
change?
care. Well, you got to take down. You take down the corporation. Okay, you file bankruptcy. You take down the corporation. You reconstitute it as a republic, as a government, the way it was meant to be by the Constitution.
Okay, but let's say that the states don't file bankruptcy. I mean, I'm not sure how that can happen, but if the deep state is really occupying California for all intents and purposes underground, and they're not poor, they're not, in fact, they may even be in control of the gold or whatever crazy stuff. So, in other words, that could just be a wish, but it may not happen. In other words, and we can't sit here for 2 years while the state decides whether it's going to declare bankruptcy or not. I mean, can we?
I'm just saying that's been brought up. Okay.
All right. Well, what is? I mean, this thing is supposed to be. July is supposed to be their big show when they're going to come forward. Supposedly, that's when John F. Kennedy Jr. is going to show up, and this is when they're also going to talk about some level of disclosure, what we call ET disclosure, whatever. This is what is in the QAnon reports. So, in order to get to that timeline, they've got a lot of work to do. I mean, where are we and what's going on? I mean, tomorrow is. I kept thinking was today, but it's tomorrow, is the 1st, right?
Right.
And that was supposed to be the big cutoff day. So, when states could reopen or make moves to reopen, whatever the hell that's going to be. So, I mean, we're right on the verge right here. Do you know what's going to be? Because I didn't see the presser, as you call him. I don't even know that word, but presser. The press conference. So what do you think is going to be, what's going to happen tomorrow? And why, by the way, and you can answer my question, but I also want to say after that, you could talk about Flynn, because I have to be honest with you. I'm not even sure that has such weight. I know it's being built up to have weight, but, talk to me about that after that.
Well, I think this is a good time to talk about Flynn, but the question of the states is, if you want to restore the republic and you recognize that the corporations control the government, you're going to have to get rid of the corporations before you can restore the republic. And if you get rid of the corporations, one of the ways to do that is to bankrupt them.
Okay, what's another way?
Well, the people in the state just decide that they want to take over. Okay, they want to exert their influence and their power and take it over. And that would be the better way to do it.
Okay, but are we
See, this
talking
is
about blood in the
just like
streets? I mean, come on.
no, not necessarily. No, we're not. We're not. And I'm not advocating that. I am not
All
advocating that.
right.
Okay. That's not what I'm saying. But we have to remember we have them outnumbered. We have them outnumbered
Yes.
everywhere, all over the
Yes.
world. Okay. All right. So you said earlier in this whole conversation that everybody was up in arms about the beaches, so they let you go out. Well, now he said no, you can't go out for another 2 weeks or whatever. Well, you know what? Everybody needs to put their voices together and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go out and we're going to go to the beaches. I mean, if millions and millions of people in Southern California, and I know there's what, 15 million down there between all the 5 counties from where you are south to the border, if you all went to the beach, what are they going to do? They're going to arrest all of you?
Well, I don't know, but
No,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I told you I was chased by a cop last weekend. I mean,
yeah, and
the fact of the matter is the cops are everywhere, and I also don't know what they're. In other words, you and I are talking here today. We're kind of right on the verge. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, etc. But we'll see what's going to happen. And it's not organized. People are not organized, And so when you're told it's illegal to demonstrate, and on top of it, you've got most of your members, and I don't know, in terms of, yeah, they're so busy telling us how many people are sick, which are lies. They never tell you how many people are well, and they also don't tell you how many, there's no real way otherwise, except for driving out in your car, which I do all the time, and going to stores and walks and stuff. And I see these people in the middle of, with these stupid masks on. But I can tell you something about my neighborhood, which is people go to the park and hang out and act just pretty much normal and play with their dogs, and they don't wear masks in my neighborhood because they're not that fucking stupid. But most people are stupid. And even in Malibu, I go to Whole Foods in Malibu, and these people are, they're wearing them in the parking lots, for God's sake. And so, this is the trouble. You can't, with what we're doing, I have a political background in reporting and studying politics. And I can tell you that as far as radical politics and rebelling against the system, when you do that kind of thing, you have to have a very organized sort of demonstration. If this is just going to be off the cuff with people just going to the beach naturally and sort of sitting there, yeah, it's going to be very difficult for cops to arrest everyone, but they might give it a good try.
Okay.
With
So
their
what?
megaphones and all
The
that.
que-
Well, is it
yeah,
going to
yeah,
change
okay, but
anything?
what-
Why? How
well, I
is it
don't
going
know,
to
but-
change anything? If these people that run, if Gil Garcetti and all these psychos run the place, and it is, I mean, we're talking the deep state is called deep for a reason. It's deep. It goes down. These levels are, yeah. So okay, so. Now I'm just throwing these things out.
Let me address
Yeah.
that. Let me address that. We've been asleep. Okay, we've been asleep. We've been asleep our whole lives. A lot of us, the majority of us, have been asleep our whole lives. Okay, so it's time to wake the hell up and take back our
I know,
country.
but it's
okay?
not
If
it's
we-
not.
I-
Trump
I-
needs. I mean, he has
but it's-
until July. I think he's going to have to throw his weight around a little more than that.
Well, I disagree because what are you going to do? I go back to the question: what are you going to do when your sissy boy governor says, "Okay, guys, you're going to have to get involved with this. You're going to have to sign up for the surveillance. We're going to track you. We're going to put, we're going to put the scarlet letter on your chest if you've had it, and we'll put another one on your back
I
if
don't
you
know.
haven't had it."
No, if what we're
And-
talking about is state governors and state governments, okay, versus the people, and the people have to be the awakened people, right? I don't know, if that's really going to go anywhere. I mean, I have had dreams of the future. I believe we're probably headed for civil war, but it's not going to quite be like this nice little demonstration where people go sit down on the beach, Gandhi style, and then.
Well, okay, all right, but the thing of it is, how do you expect it? How do you expect to get it back? Because guess what? There's going to be a lot of states that aren't going to go along with that and aren't even going to implement that.
Go.
Okay? So you're going to have 40 or 45 states that are going to be back in business, that are going to be going back to business as normal, life as usual. And you in California and you people in New York are going to be going by these draconian laws, and they're going to try to get you to be tracked, and they're going to try to take
Well,
your blood, and they're going to try to
that's
take
not
your
going to
test.
fly.
So
I
what
mean,
are you guys going to do? Well,
I don't know.
but you guys are
Yeah.
the ones who've got to do
It's
it.
going to be a problem.
Is your okay? Well, what's your freedom worth? That's the question, I guess. What is your freedom worth? Because it'd be easier if this was 1963, and my parents' generation said we're not going to put up with you killing our president, right? But they didn't do anything. And then we have the Iran Contra that comes through in the middle 80s, and we didn't do anything. And then we had 9/11. 19 years ago, and we didn't do
But
anything.
they didn't believe,
so the pain,
they believe the majority of people are programmed, and that's true today as it was in 9/11. And even, that's a huge problem.
I get it. So then we're not, then we don't deserve to have freedom.
Well,
Carrie.
I don't agree.
We don't deserve.
I don't agree. Okay, now let's move along though, and get into the whole Flynn thing, because this, you're not going to understand. I mean, this game here that's being played is not going to proceed if we have a weak sort of executive branch. If they are perceived to be weak, if Trump comes across as weak, it's one thing to re-educate people and to kind of do what you're going to do. And this is why I guess, whether civil war is the eventuality, I don't know for sure, but it is an interesting dilemma. And but let's talk about Flynn, because they're making a really big thing about this. I understand, but the Russia probe was a lie anyway. So yes, so this guy got taken down, this general. Talk about that.
Well, as the information's coming out now, they were trying to take, just today, there were 4 pages came out last night in there. I think there were 9 or 11 pages came out today. And in today's, they had a email exchange with Strzok, and I forget who, they redacted his name, but somebody figured it out and said who it was. There's an email exchange where they initially, it looks like, assigned some DC field agents. They went out and did some investigation and said, there's nothing here. Let's drop the case. Let's drop the investigation. And Strzok intervened and said, no, we can't drop it. Okay. This was January 4th, I believe. This is before Trump even took office. And this was they're going to try to take down Trump, and they already started. I've gone through this before. They, tried to hack the election. That didn't work. They tried to do recounts in a few states. That didn't work. They tried to threaten the Electoral College representatives. That didn't work. And on the day that they put Trump, the inauguration, when Trump took office, they come out and start with the Russian stuff. And now we're finding out that they already were trying to get Flynn. And we know about Crossfire Hurricane, where they started that back in, it looks like, March of 2016. This was what Strzok referred to as his insurance. So you have the FBI, you have about 5 or 6 people, and all these people are involved in all of this stuff. They're involved in Crossfire Hurricane with Trump. They're involved with these FISA reports, these FISA investigations on Carter Page and Papadopoulos. They're involved with the Hillary mid-year exam. They're involved in trying to get Trump out of office, and they're involved in the Mueller investigation. Okay. And it's just a handful, and they're all at the top. And they're committing treason.
Okay, is it treason?
Well, they're committing.
Okay, is it treason?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's treason.
Well, and who is going to decide that?
A military tribunal is going to decide that.
And where are they? And are they offshore? Are they, you know what I mean?
Most likely in Gitmo.
And is the public going to know anything about it? Because they're making a big thing about this now.
Yeah, yes, this is the rollout. See, we sit here and we talk about the people who are not awake, the people who wear the mask, the people who are scared to death of this coronavirus, right? And then you want to go the other direction with this and say, well, why doesn't he come out with all this stuff? What do you think those people are going to do when this stuff starts coming out? They're going to freak out. This is going to trigger them big time. Okay, I mean, this has
I'm
always
not
been
so
the
sure.
problem.
Well, I mean,
I
there's
mean,
certain
okay,
things that
all
hit
right,
you at home, and there's other things that are sort of
yeah. So how far do you go with that? Do we get to go to the point where we get to talk about the pedophilia? Do we
right.
get to go to the point where we
Well,
talk about the
hello.
human
I mean,
trafficking?
right.
Well, do we? I mean, do we? And do you think? I mean, these people. I had a conversation with somebody today, and we were talking about the coronavirus,
Okay,
and
now wait one
she said,
second. Sorry, I got to talk to some people in the chat because this has gotten out of hand here. Okay, you guys that don't want me to participate in this conversation, get the fuck off my channel. Leave right now. Don't don't stop. Don't pass go. Just go. This is my channel. I'm an investigative reporter, and I'm going to give Paladin as much shit as I want. And he's a good friend of mine. He knows it. And we planned this. So if you don't like it, get the fuck off my channel, okay? And get out of my chat room right now. And that's just how it's going to be. So if you don't like my style, you don't like what I have to say, and you don't like my questions, then go listen to some namby-pamby kiss ass out there. And those people are so prevalent, you should have no problem finding a nice little warm home. But this ain't it. So get the fuck off. Okay. And thank you everyone else for having intelligence to listen to a good spirited back and forth between two people, two adults. And as an investigative journalist, I am not going to sit here like some passive listener. So fuck off and get off my channel. Okay. And Paladin, please continue now with regard to what you were saying right before we had to interrupt you with
no,
this problem.
I forget.
Well, I don't
I forget.
forget because we're talking about Flynn. We're talking about the
Okay.
rubber
Okay.
meeting the road and how the people are going to react, and those that don't believe who have to be convinced. But they're not going to be part of a military tribunal. They're not going to be sitting in the audience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's a lot of this problem, this deep state. It does. You're right. It does go deep. The hole is very, very, very deep, and it's going to take a while to get them out of there. Okay, and it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be a lot of people that some people, or a majority of the people in the United States, hold up as heroes and idols. And it's going to be Hollywood, it's going to be the corporate, it's going to be government, and it's going to shatter some people's worlds, and it's going to shatter them in a big way. So the question is, are they going to be able to handle this or not? I don't know. But, this has always been a discussion that we have had sort of on a philosophical level or a hypothetical level. How are we going to do this? And, a slow roll seems to be the consensus. And that will hopefully, by the time they get through that slow roll, and it's sort of a desensitization. Okay, they've introduced that now the FBI is corrupt. They've showed Comey to be a liar, Strzok to be a liar, Page to be a liar, all of them to be a liar. Okay, and this confirms what Trump has been saying from day one. They've been spying on me. Trump said that before he took office,
Sure.
and everybody was just up in arms. And Trump knew. Okay, he's known all this time, but he also knows the people have to come along with all of this stuff. And so are they ready? I don't know. They better get ready because it's coming. And whether they're ready or not, it's going to come. And it's going to start coming on a daily basis, from what I was told today, every day. The deep state is going to be deluged with the offense. We're going on the offensive now, okay? So how are the people going to react to this? I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, hopefully, we know what's going on. You and I know what's going on. A lot of the listeners know what's going
absolutely.
on. But the people wearing the masks, they could be a Tom Hanks lover, right? And they find out that their boy is a pedophile. What are they going to do? These are the things that disrupt financial markets, disrupt communities, disrupt, society. And you want to do this, but you don't want to go to the point where you're going to, cause more harm than good, because this has been going on so long. It's kind of like, you have a problem, and a physical problem, you let it go, you let it go, you let it go, and then finally you have to do something, and they gotta get the knife out and cut on you to get rid of the problem. Well, there's a lot of pain there, and this is what we're going to have to go through, unfortunately.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
okay.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a. I don't know if I don't. The thing of it is, I don't know if there's a solution. To me, I just like dump it all in one day. I've always been
Yeah.
that way. No, I'm like,
No, I
let's
know.
just get it out there. Because I've been awake since, well, I've been awake for 57 years, and
Yeah.
so I'm tired. I'm weary of this whole thing. Okay,
Okay.
I have been called. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
and
saying. You
so
know
have
where I'm
I.
coming
So
from.
listen, I have to say though that the trouble is that, in other words, and I had Richard Allen Miller on my show earlier today, and we were talking about information. See, what we've got here, of course, is an information war, and that's what's been going on. The trouble with information is it goes in one ear, out the other, and people that don't want to hear will close their ears, so to speak. And I realize that, and we are very hopeful that the evidence will be put forward in such a way that it'll be very sort of unequivocal, okay? But you
Hmm.
and I both know that there is a lot. I mean, any one of these people could be a trial that lasts a year in if things were like in just a normal world, right? So you understand, with each side there is the defense and there's the prosecutor and so on. So how is this, and they must have thought about this, but in a certain, when you've got people as entrenched as they are in this whole, we call it the Democrats, but in reality, again, this is worldwide, and it's a perception in reality. So what we're trying to do is change the complete understanding of the paradigm of reality for these people, and they're not going to go willingly, in essence, in my view. And so what, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, information is great, and they can bring up all the evidence they want, but until we get, they are being tried in the public as well as behind the scenes at some military tribunal. And are these tribunals going to be like their decisions? They may be law, they may be pushed by a military and supported by Trump, etc. But are they going to be able to convince the people that this isn't some other counter deep state operation from their point of view? People will be reluctant to accept the truth. You could talk all night and all day. Even if you show pictures, what are you going to show pictures of? You know what I'm saying? How are you going to convince these people? Because they don't even believe that it's beyond the pale of understanding, if you will. And sure, you can trot out a bunch of children that have been kept in cages in an underground base at some point. I mean, it may have to come to that where you actually have to show them, right? But they may say it's staged. I mean, it actually gets into the whole idea of that, what will people who don't believe in so-called ETs, it's kind of like when they say Columbus came to America, and they like to say that the Indians couldn't see the ships because they couldn't believe that such a thing would exist, so they couldn't see it. You understand this problem with perception on the side of people whose whole paradigm depends on believing that the Democrats are in the right. This is
Yeah.
it boggles the mind. The evidence has been out there, okay? This is not the first time this evidence is coming forward. It's been all over the net. Jimmy Savile is the biggest case in Britain for a broadcaster who was completely given, complete support by the BBC. And to this day, nobody has taken down the BBC over the fact that they've supported a child killer. A pedo and a child killer,
Yeah.
proven substantially to the British public. And yet nothing happened, as far as I could tell, over in Britain. The
Right.
information came out. But BBC, those officers of that company were compliant. The Queen was compliant. The people that supported him in all aspects of corporate, the corporate world, so to speak. And I didn't follow his career, so I don't even know how far that goes. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
this is going to be the same way. I mean, we in our country, you might get all of the evidence coming out, but can you get these people, can you get these corporations taken down as a result? That's unlikely. Fauci, you can tell us and see, there's always that lone gunman scenario. Oh, they'll believe there's one bad seed, right? This is not one bad seed, okay? This is a network. And exposing that, especially if you're going to have behind the scenes trials, where the people aren't able to participate and see what's really going on in the courtroom, etc. Just, for what it's worth, this is something to think about.
There's no doubt about it. And that's why I'm concerned about this. And I'm a little bit, honked about it, because if people have to wear masks and are scared to death about this coronavirus, are they going to be able to accept what the truth is about their leaders and their heroes and their movie stars and all this when it comes out? Probably not. But you know what? It's going to come out anyway. So it doesn't really matter to a certain degree, because those people are either going to make it and they're going to be able to adjust, or they're not. And if they're not, they're the people that are going to jump off the damn rooftops and the bridges and all those kinds of things. I mean, this is the pain that we're going to all have to go through to get to where we want to get.
Okay,
And that's because we have let this go on.
But it's not just the people. Again, it's militaries. It's also the New World Order and their echelons that are very much ensconced in the United States, as they are in Britain and around the world.
I get that. But this whole thing is to expose them. Okay. This whole thing is to expose them and to get them out of the positions that they're in. And the thing of it is, to be able to do that, you can't just go arrest them. You've got to expose them. So is it not going to be good to expose Fauci? It's not going to be good to expose Birch now before you arrest them, because now they've been exposed. Now everybody knows. They're sitting there thinking, why is this guy up there?
Sure.
The Trump supporters are saying, why is this clown up there talking? Why is he? Because
well, in a sense,
Trump is putting him on display, and he's done that with a lot of his cabinet guys.
Look, he's not just putting him on display. He's allowing the guy to continue to influence and to, he's even standing on stage saying we don't have a quarrel. This game, I was talking to somebody else about this. Trump has had to play a role up to now, but at a certain point, his gloves are going to have to come off, and
they're coming off. They're coming off now,
right.
Carrie. They're coming off now. The start of the Flynn stuff, and see the stuff behind the scenes. They had to take down the infrastructure so that they could do this without false flags and all kinds of other stuff that would endanger the people. Okay, and that's what they had to do first. They had to take care of their mercenaries, their private armies that they've been funding all this time. They had to take those out. It's a military.
Where are the mercenaries? I mean, they took care of them in what way?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, they arrested him. They probably arrested him. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the details, but all I know is they took him down, because that had to happen first before they started the public announcements and starting the system, the new system, and to start the public arrests. They had to do that first, because if you start that and those guys are still running around out there, these guys can make a call and say, okay, go do this, go do that, set off a nuke here, go do this, whatever. And then you got a problem, you see?
So you're assuming because
in
the
danger.
announcements are starting that those first kind of milestones or whatever have been achieved.
According to the plan, as I understand it, that had to be accomplished before they would start the public disclosure of the arrests and the bad guys,
All right,
if you will.
Very good. And
okay.
and I hope that's the case. Okay, very, very much so. Now, is there any area that we haven't really delved into? I know, digital currency. So what do you have to say about that?
Digital currency, I mean, we're sort of there right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in essence, with the, credit cards and debit cards and all that kind of stuff. So there's a difference between a digital currency and a cashless society. Okay. There is a difference. And so I don't have the details on this, but I hope that the new system will also have, you will be able to use cash, and I think you will, because it's going to be asset backed. And so that puts a whole different perspective on the financial system, because before they can just go out and start creating money out of thin air, basically the way they've been doing for years and years and years, now it's got to be physically backed by something that's tangible, and that's going to make it different. So the digital currency, I mean, I think we're already in that digital currency stage, and I guess I don't have a problem with it, and as long as it's handled properly. And that's always the key. That's always the key. You can set up any kind of financial system you want to, but if it's not honest and it doesn't have integrity, then it doesn't matter what kind of system is, it's not going to work. So, we just have to see. I mean, my understanding of the quantum financial system, it is transparent, and you're not going to have offshore or off balance sheet accounts will not be acceptable in this system. The money off, if you take it off balance sheet, it's not going to be recognized in the system, so you won't be able to do anything with it. There'll just be a lot of strict guidelines, and it'll be run the way it should be run. Now, that's the hope. That's the intention of this.
Okay, but
And it's not going to be the Chinese. I mean, I think one thing we got to remember, that this is basically, we were headed toward the Chinese running our world financial system, and that has been hijacked here. It won't be the Chinese.
okay, but will we have a split? In other words, because the financial situation is not, exclusive to the United States. Okay, so you say we're going to be asset backed, and all the the off balance sheet money is it's in Indonesia, it's in China, it's what I'm saying. So what is that? How do we dictate those terms?
Well, this is the system, and we still have the biggest economy in the world. And so if you want to be in the game, you're going to have to go to this, and they're going to do it. It's going to happen. I mean, it's not a question of having to convince these other countries to do it, because they've all been under Rockefeller and Rothschild's thumb, just like the rest of the world.
Right. So
I mean, it's not going to be difficult to convince them to do it. They're on board with this. Everybody is on board with this, because it bypasses the bankers as the controllers of the system as it stands right now. It's going to bypass them. It's going to cut them out of the deal. The Fed's going to be no more.
okay, now just as a side note, because my partner is British, and I just got information the last 2 days, they have a new law, or a set of laws actually, they're rolling out supposedly. And I don't know how hard and fast these are, but saying that they're going to force vaccinations on all of the UK. Now, I don't
Yeah.
think people are going to go for that in the UK, obviously. And so this is another big problem, because travel involves going outside the United States. So even if we got our ducks in order here and didn't fall for the vaccines and didn't fall for all this nonsense, even though we more or less have up to a certain point, I mean, this Rockefeller testing everyone, that's right next door to the vaccine type of situation. I mean, I don't, so, okay, getting stopped. We certainly stopped Huawei, which is a good sign. But nonetheless, people are we do commerce with the rest of the world. And if they are vaccinated and we're not, what's going to happen with that? Have you heard any rumblings? It's not, we're not going to solve these problems here, but these are the questions I believe are in the public's mind. And so Britain is a very good example of a country that is our partner, that is taking a draconian step and is run by the Illuminati, basically.
Well, yeah, and it's the same situation that we were talking about earlier with California and other states within the United States. I mean, that problem that you just described, also could be a problem here in the States if a state like California or New York or somebody else, Michigan, or some of these more what I want to say, socialist or aggressive states want to require vaccinations and require this tracking and don't want to let people into their state unless they abide by these ridiculous, draconian measures, then they're going to have to pay the price for it. I mean, I don't know what we do for England. The English people have to do that. They have to take care of that. We can't fight that battle for them.
Well, needless to say, but this is just something to throw out there because, of course, as a global community, which is really what we are, and if people want to believe that the bioweapon was created in China without any help from the U.S. or Israel, for example, then go ahead and believe that. But it's a case in point to say something that happens halfway around the world affects us directly. Now, this was by design, needless to say. It didn't have to affect us in this way, but they let it. And there's also some confusion, I think, out there as to the fact that this rolled out and then Trump and his boys seem to have taken advantage of it. They didn't create it, but they took advantage of it. Do you have any inside knowledge with regard to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and you look at the timing of all of this, and like I say, this was all set up by Obamacare. This was planned years and years and years ago to roll out while Obamacare was in effect, and this would have been the time that they would have taken over because they would have required vaccinations, they would have required all this surveillance and all this tracking and all this testing. It would have been a law. There wouldn't have been anything that you could do about it. And we can thank Chief Justice Roberts for that law being passed at that point in time, because he changed it from a fine to a tax, and hopefully he is going to be caught up in all of this stuff at some point in time, maybe sooner rather than later, I'm hearing. And so so anyway, we knew it was coming, and you got to go back and look at the impeachment. Is it now obvious why Nancy sat on the impeachment in the House before she finally sent it to the Senate? The timing of that is not a coincidence, okay? But Trump was ready and said, okay, we'll just use this as we'll let them, do their thing and send everybody home and treat it as a pandemic because we know what their plans are as far as what the blueprint is to do that. And while they're doing that, we will take them out, because that will give us the cover that we need, where people will be off the street, people will not be out, and only the necessities, food and what have you, and everybody will stay in. And while they're staying in, that will keep them out of harm's way, and we will take down the deep state. When we get the infrastructure and everything taken out, then we will start the public stuff. And the public stuff will be obviously around the same time that we start opening things back up. And with the new financial system, I mean, this could be devastating if we were on the old model going forward, with all the debt and all the money that's being put out there for free, because we're all getting a taste of socialism. And I don't know if anybody likes it or not. I don't like it. So therefore, when the new system comes out, there's going to be so much abundance that people aren't going to believe it, because they don't realize now what debtor slaves they are at the present time. I mean, it's hard for people to conceive of a new system when all they know is the old system. And that's what we're dealing with now. That's the transition that we're about to make.
Okay, now I put you on the spot and brought you on my show, and I'd been begging you for like several weeks to do this, and we finally had sort of a knockdown drag out a few days ago, and you agreed. And I want to thank you so much for doing this. And certainly we don't want to make you a target, but I do want to say that part of the trouble that I see is that we do have QAnon, but we don't have any spokespeople who are really talking about what's going on. And so people are left in a quandary. And of course, if you want people to support Trump, if you want people to support QAnon, I'm afraid that things it's like a moving target. Maybe QAnon worked for a while, but we're getting to kind of a different ground now where the ground is really shifting, and there's going to be a need for people to come forward and talk about this, have this discussion that we're having here, on a larger venue. And I have to give it to Tucker Carlson for wanting to bring forward some of these subjects, and Laura Ingraham on Fox, because they are bucking the tradition, I have to say, by saying, questioning. I mean, I can't remember if we discussed or those two doctors, over 5 million people saw the
Yes.
video. They're actually
Yeah.
from California, and they're talking
Right.
about, the complete lies that are being told, and they're critical care doctors, so they really deal with these kinds of situations, and basically coming out very clearly, and concisely, and telling it like it is, and then YouTube takes them down. Of course, this is the Gestapo, and
Right. Right.
and look at this video. Just let everyone know this. I mean, this video may not make it, okay, onto YouTube. I mean, it might be on there for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. Who knows how long it'll stay, and whether they'll take it down. And I'll put it back up on BitChute, and you can put it on your channel, and people can make it go viral, because I think this is a very important discussion to have, and we need more discussions like this, okay? And we need group discussions, okay? So I'm just throwing that out there. Have you heard any rumblings about, are they going to allow some kind of discussions to go on? I mean, now with the Flynn, disclosures, and I mean, I hope we get beyond this Russia stuff, because it's kind of like, distant from people, but it's going to be in your face if it's, if it's Tom Hanks. It's going to be in your face if it's, people that are involved
Oprah.
in
Yeah.
the walks of
Yeah.
life that we know, and the organizations that people supposedly respect, etc., are exposed for and I just did a really fascinating interview with a wonderful researcher, investigative journalist yesterday. His name is Press Gray, and he's investigated the Andrew Breitbart's death, and found out that the coroner was also killed. And I did a little extra investigation of his investigation, and found that there's a whole litany of cases that have gone through the LA coroner's office that are highly, highly suspicious, and have never seen the light of day, because no one is putting two and two together. In other words, we're looking at a systemic situation with regard to that coroner's office, and no one's the wiser. I mean, I'm sure there are people on the ground that know this stuff, but you know what I'm saying, the public. And
Yeah.
and so even the family had trouble linking those two deaths, even though and you're going to love this because you're an investigator. I was thinking they should hire you, because both individuals died of poison. And it's
Ugh.
a mob. It's like an old-fashioned way to kill someone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
it's,
one of their favorite
yeah.
ways, is to poison
And there you
Yep.
go.
Yep. Yep.
See,
yep,
and this
yep,
is the kind
yep.
of thing we're talking about. I mean, we put our heads together. Do you know the amount of corruption that is going to be exposed in all walks of life, that are going to hit home, not just, not just in the high reaches of power, so to speak, in the federal government,
Right.
and in the military that's more removed. So this is just talking about this, and how important it is to get the word out, to get other people like you to come forward, who know the scenario to some degree. They may not be, in the insider group of QAnon and the Trump team, but they certainly can speak intelligently about what they're doing, what they're intending to roll out, etc. And not being so kind of covert, because frankly, we're done with secrecy.
Yes, I agree. And, one of the reasons that I hesitated to do this, because I feel like the white hats are, are what do I want to say? Our objective, our first objective has been accomplished, because if we get a new system, then we get to go to our second objective, which was to, restore humanity, do the humanitarian projects, bring everybody up to speed, help everybody evolve into a whole different lifestyle. And I want to I want to read a post by Q, because I think it's relevant and I think it's important, and it was just dropped today, and it says, sometimes you can't tell the public the truth. You must show them. A deeply entrenched enemy who controls the vast majority of communications is only defeated by game theory, which game theory is obviously the, working out different scenarios with opposing forces and see how it works out. And that's why I was hesitant to come on and do this, because I feel like now it's up to the people if they're going to come along or not, because the information is going to be out there. And, you and I have discerned this. We've been at this game for a long, long time. We've discerned it. It's been out there. And if you dig a little bit, you can find a whole lot of information, right? So the thing of it is, it's now it's up to the people to get caught up with where everybody else is. And so if they don't want to do it, then it's not going to happen no matter how much we talk to them. It's kind of like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so, at some point in time, when people start, more and more and more people start waking up, then perhaps we will have a place to help them through this transition. But at this point in time, it's inevitable. It's going down whether they're ready for it or not. And so at some point in time, they've got to make a decision themselves. Are they going to participate, or are they not going to participate? It's kind of like lead follower, get the hell out of the way, because that train's coming down the track. And this is our best and last shot at this. If Hillary would have won, this would have been over. This would have been our demise right here and right now.
Right.
So, I don't know what else to say other than, and Q, I understand the way Q operates and what Q has done, and some of the posts that Q has put out is for the deep state. It's a message to them that we know we know what's going on, and we're coming after you, and we're not going to stop. And we did some of that too in our report. So I get what Q is doing, and it's not about the messenger. It is about the message. Do not take my word for anything. Do your own research, do your own investigation, because that's the way you're going to feel it and you're going to understand it, and it's going to resonate to you. And once it resonates, that's when the change occurs. And, we can help, Carrie, and do as much as we can, but it's going to be up to each individual to make that transition to the new world, if you will. And if they can't do it, they can't do it. And some people aren't going to be able, they're just not going to be able to do it. So we've got to have compassion, but there's a part of me.
Governors are not going to be able to do it, and that's going to be a problem for us. And so yes,
right.
But no, very well said. And this is why I wanted you on my show, and I'm very happy that you've been very clear as always. And I think people will benefit from watching this and so on. So. I don't know. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but do you want to take any questions from the chat at all, or do you think that we've kind of covered it?
That's up to you. There is. I did want to say one other thing, and now I forgot it. So go ahead. If you want to take some questions, we can take some questions.
Okay. Well, no. If there's something you want to say, if you can think of whatever it is, and I'll take a question if you need some time, but. Just in terms of the white hats and in terms of your situation, because it is very important that people understand that we are standing up here to bring this forward just to help people to understand it, but we are not the final word on any of it. And like I said, this is an ongoing discussion. I think tactics are one thing, execution is very important. There's the plan, there's the execution, right, of the plan. And so this is where we're at these junctures now, and I think there's going to be a lot to be said out there and this is you get into more dicey sort of area when you get into tactics, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I think that's, something that not everybody understands, and it sort of tends to confuse them. And again, it's message, it's message over messenger. We've all been trained to attach ourselves to our favorite personalities, whether it be movie stars or newscasters or whatever, and then we just open our minds and we let them download the information, and then we parrot it at the water cooler as if we are educated on it, and we don't know anything because this is what they're telling us. And I think that is the biggest hurdle that, as we've talked about, the people getting over this hurdle about believing what's been happening and what's been going on. I think that's the first step. They have got to understand that the media is part of the plot. The media are the paid propaganda arm of the deep state. And so therefore, everything that they tell us, you have got to question every single thing, including the corona deaths, the coronavirus treatments, the whole thing. You've got to question all of it. And you've got to question Trump too. Stay on his ass. We've got to stay on his ass and keep him on course and support him as much as possible, because he's the only one that stands between our demise and our freedom. He is the only one that stands between us. They don't want him. They want us. That's who they want. That's who they're going after. That's who they're attacking. They're attacking us. They're not attacking Trump, because he stands between us and them. And he's the only one that stands between us and them. So we got to keep that in mind.
Well, I think, Trump and his team, let's put it that way to be a little bit more clear on that. And, because he doesn't stand alone.
Right.
Now, what I want to, there's a question in the chat. There's a couple questions maybe we can grab. One of them is they want to know if you're aware that Trump's modeling agency traffics in underage children.
No, and I'd like to see the proof for that.
Okay. So these are the kinds of questions that are going to come out, of course, and always have. I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Just to address that subject for a second, Mueller climbed up Trump's ass for how many years? 2 years and $30 million and 40 investigators and 12 lawyers or whatever, and he didn't find anything. Okay, if there would have been something on Trump, they would have come up with it before the election, and because they couldn't come up with anything on Trump, the only thing they had to do was the only thing left to do was to create the Steele dossier and try to turn that into something real, and that's all going to start unraveling on them as we speak. I mean, that's going to start unraveling. Right. And this is and what we're going to see at the end of the day was it was going to be an attempted takedown, much like the takedown that they pulled off in November of 1963 on the 22nd on a Friday. It's much the same thing.
Okay.
It's a presidential takedown.
Now, let me see. Somebody wants to know the mainstream media being taken out. I'm not sure that's even an option. How those sort of ducks are going to fall is a big question, really.
Well, I think I can see one way, because all those people get licensed by the Federal Trade Commission or the FCC, right, or FCC. Communications. Okay, yeah. So if they can prove, which I think is going to be easily done, and we're probably going to see that in the next few weeks and months, that they colluded with these people to get this information, because everything that Mueller has done, the FBI, we get all these leaks. We've had all these leaks for 3 years, okay? And when that stuff comes out, I think that's going to be the government's way, these regulating agencies, to say, we're going to pull your license. You can't operate anymore because you've been part of this.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach, and we're going to have to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, and Carrie, I think it's a good point, because that's going to be the most important one.
Well, there is,
in my mind.
Yeah, there's a lot to that, because corporations are guilty of so much that
Yes, yes.
yes, certainly media corporations are guilty of a great deal because they have been in lockstep behind their masters.
Right,
But
right.
to say that's the most, I'm not even. I know it's very important. I won't deny that. Now, someone wants to know, what do you think about the Trump Nikola Tesla connection? Have you looked into that?
Yeah, well, I'm aware of it. I know that his uncle John Trump was involved with Tesla, and I think that to me is a confirmation of why Trump is doing this, because he knows more than the average bear, let's say, about a lot of different things. And I have been told that the release of technology, of which Tesla was a big, big, big part of, that is coming very quickly. And that in and of itself, Carrie, will serve to take down a lot of these corporations that charge us for things that we could get for free with new technology. So I think that's in our future too.
Yes. Okay, that piece is very important, and it does get into the whole 5G and how that's going to be rolled out without the Huawei and negative
Yes,
impact
involvement.
on the people. And I
Right.
actually spoke about that a while back on one of my videos, and QAnon has talked about that. So for what it's worth, talking about that Trump is not planning to roll out 5G, this negative sort of version of 5G. Now, the
Right.
governors, someone wants to know, the governors take an oath to defend the Constitution. Who can sue?
Who can
I
sue?
don't
Well,
know.
I think anybody can sue. I mean, you can take them to court. You can sue them for your civil rights. And I think hopefully it won't come to that. But if some of these states resist opening up and the people won't fight back, I mean, I think that's unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that you can do. And Barr has publicly come out and said, we're going to enforce the Constitution here. We're not going to let the states do things that are against the Constitution just because they've declared a crisis. That doesn't mean that you suspend everybody's rights. So I think that people actually have to be active in their states, and they have to organize. I mean, what is your freedom worth? Freedom is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, you're going to lose it. So you've got to do that. You've got to get out there and fight for your rights. I mean, that's where it's at. People have been sitting there for too long being asleep, and they think, that they live in the land of the free and the home of the brave and all that nonsense, and they really don't.
Well,
They live in
they
the land of the criminals
haven't,
and the
yeah, for a long
thieves.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Okay, quickly, because I'm
yeah.
going to wrap this up, but I want to throw a couple other questions your way. There's a couple good ones here. Trump declared a state of emergency, USA. That meant FEMA took over. Is that correct? Someone wants to know.
No, 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 no. That rumor went around, and that FEMA could take over, could take over the presidency and run the country, and that's not accurate.
Okay.
No.
And
Yeah.
last but not least, and this is an understatement, war with China. What do you think about that eventuality? You think we're headed that way, or are you hearing rumblings to that effect?
Well, I can give you one thing today that I got, and of course we're not going to be able to confirm this, and it may come out, it may not come out. Um, and I asked permission to disclose this, and the word was you can disclose anything we talked about. So there's rumors that Kim Jong Un is he's sick, he's dead, he's in bad shape. And I got word today that the Chinese attempted entry into North Korea through some tunnels in North Korea, and they got stopped, and the body count for the Chinese was 800. So it looks as if we can, kind of determine anything from that, it looks like Kim Jong Un is in bad shape. They are getting ready for a regime change in North Carolina if he
You mean
passes.
North
And
Korea?
if North Korea. I'm sorry. Yeah, North Korea. I'm sorry. Thank you for. I'm glad you corrected me. Yeah, North Korea. And if that happens, China obviously wants to be in place to take them over. From the way I'm gathering that now, another comment was made, and that was the Chinese have acquired from the U.S. some ports. One particular point in California where I was told upwards of a million Chinese were in, were smuggled in. And I said, well, wait a minute, are these troops or are these just people? And, the answer was, I don't know. Okay. So now to pull back and give you the overall on China, I think this whole thing, because of the way that we're approaching it, and I think that at some point in time in the future, they keep asking Trump, well, is China responsible? Did it come from a bat in the wet market? Did it come from the lab? Was it a mistake? Was it on purpose? Blah, 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 blah. And Trump keeps telling them that we're looking into it, and he will let them know at some point in the future. Well, that falls under the timing is everything. So what I want to say is that from the feedback that I'm getting from our network is that the whole world now is looking at China in a much different way than what they were before. And
Okay.
what was, I mean, we've talked about, and just to give one example of in the United States, you and I have talked about this many times about the Bundy situation in Nevada, where they wanted to confiscate Bundy's land property in Nevada so they could sell it to the Chinese for the solar farms and whatever the hell else was underneath the ground,
Right.
right? So that's just one example. It's interesting that the Oregon situation that Ammon Bundy got involved with a year or two later had to do with the uranium that was underground up there, and they were doing the same thing in Nevada, or same thing in Oregon that they were doing in Nevada. They were taking ranchers' land away. And they put those two, that father and son, who Trump pardoned, they put them in jail so they could confiscate their land.
Yeah, and that was a whole,
So,
and Hillary was a big time
yeah,
behind at least the Oregon thing.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to
So the
back up.
pushback is going to happen.
Sorry.
The pushback on China from a world standpoint, I think, is going to happen because this whole coronavirus thing is going to backfire. It's not going to work the way they wanted it to work. And it's going to go back on the deep state, and it's going to go back on China. And that's coming out.
Okay. There were some rumblings today in the press, Trump saying some things to that effect. Now, I want to back you up just 1 second here because you made a provocative statement, then you just sort of sailed on. You said you thought there were 1 million Chinese dropped off somewhere. Are you talking about in
That
California?
came in.
Came in through the
Yeah,
border? Came
there's
in. Where are you talking? What are
no,
we?
it's through a port. It's through a
San
port. There was a
Francisco?
port. I'm not sure because
You're going to
I
have to
don't know
do
which.
San Francisco because there's no other way to hide them, you know?
Okay, well that very well could possibly be, but Obama sold them one of our ports.
Oh, well, that's Long
In
Beach.
Okay, well then they came in through Long Beach, and
This
so
isn't
the
a
word
rumor.
is
This is something you have intel on.
yes, yes,
Wow.
and I just got that today. Now I understand because I followed up on that Trump has since closed that and it's not happening anymore, but it was. So
Wow.
this is part of Trump's build the wall strategy because he knows what's been happening in the infiltration that's been going on in the United States. So the socialists, the communists, whatever you want to call them, can turn it into a racist thing, but it doesn't have anything to do with race. It has everything to do with our security as a country.
Right. Yeah, and their plans for takeover, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. All right, it's been great fun talking to you, and I want to thank you again for being a good sport and for really being part of this give and take here. And I hope there can be more brave journalists out there that are willing to actually engage and get down to it with their guests and really get the word out as to the various issues that are at hand here so people can when people listen, they can mull it over in their own minds, then they can do their own research, and they can have discussions among themselves, etc. So that's what the platform can be, a very useful platform to do, and I want to thank you for making that possible.
Well, thank you for having me. We always have good discussions, and we're able to interact just fine. And if they thought we were into it this time, they should hear us in private, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I love it. I love it because we're both passionate about it. We come at it from different places with different information, and no matter how long it takes, there's always a meeting of the mind, and everybody got to see the meeting of the mind tonight. And whether we agree on everything or disagree on everything or parts or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change our status or our relationship because we know each other so well. I know your heart. I know you're coming from a good place. I hope you know I am. So it's all good. Really, it's all good. And I appreciate I appreciate the interaction with you. Always have.
Thank you. Okay. Well, and thank you everyone in the chat. The chat's been very, very active during the show, so that'll be on YouTube for all to see, and hopefully my very clear statement got out there. So pass the word around. If you don't want a feisty host here, then please do go elsewhere. It's a free country, at least regarding that so far. So good luck with this. If you want to copy it, take it, a copy and put it on other platforms. We just don't know whether this will stick on YouTube. It's considered a very, pushing the envelope. I know that. So we'll see where it goes. But thank you again, Paladin, and take care and keep the options open. Tell your guys, anyone wants to come on my show, talk about stuff, shoot the shit, so to speak, bring stuff out and wants to go straight to the people. This is a great place to do that. So thank you.
Well, I'm sure some of them are listening. So that message got straight to them. So we'll see what the feedback is.
It's an open invitation. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye. So that was a lot of fun, and I hope you found it stimulating and interesting and worth listening to and watching. Unfortunately, as I say, he can't be on camera because of the work he does. He needs to have a certain anonymity in terms of his physicality to be the investigator he is. So we have to honor that here. But thank you again, and we'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be talking to Miles Johnston. He is a British journalist, and I've had him on my show many times. And he kind of does a similar job to what I do, except that he is going to be talking about what's really going on in Britain. And he may also know the scene in Ireland because he's also Irish. So he's a fascinating guy. And so hopefully that'll happen tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So stay tuned for that. Take care and fight the good fight and to the journey. Bye-bye.